Hello, Internet. It is I, Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Predictions. Today, we're going to be talking about Bad Boys Ride or Die. So, as usual, we're going to be going over the pros and cons. So, let's get to it. Pros. So, Bad Boys. This series has been around since the 90s, particularly 1995. In fact, next year, that original Bad Boys movie will be 30 years old. Yeah. Just want to let that sink in for a moment. So let's go through these movies very quickly. So, Bad Boys. This came out in 1995, starred Martin Lawrence, Will Smith, and it was directed by Michael Bay. It was Michael Bay's directorial debut. And during this time, like Martin and Will, they were still very much TV actors. Like this was very much Fresh Prince Will Smith, and Martin had his show Martin of the same name. They really didn't have much experience like in movies at this point. But when Bad Boys came out, it was a decent little hit. Opened with 15 million, made 65 million domestically, 141 million on a budget of like 23 million. That's pretty good. Very good. And after that, all three of their careers, like Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, Michael Bay, their careers skyrocketed afterwards, especially Will Smith, because literally 1 year later, he was in Independence Day, and that was one of the biggest movies of the 90s, the biggest movie in 1996, and that launched him into the stratosphere because he had that, and then right after that, Men in Black, 1997, another enormous hit for him. And then Will Smith became box office gold for a long time. And Martin Lawrence, sure, like his level of star power was never quite on the same level as Will Smith's. I'm just saying that objectively. But he still had some hits under his name, particularly, is the Big Mama's House movies, particularly that first movie. And then Michael Bay, I mean, like this dude, like he went from Bad Boys 3 years later, making Armageddon, which was the biggest movie in 1998. They made Pearl Harbor, which was one of the biggest movies of 2001. And then all this leads to Bad Boys 2 in 2003. So Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, Michael Bay, all their name value was really just really increased by quite a bit. And despite the 8 year gap, usually a gap like that between sequels is like a death sentence. Usually it should be like 2 to 3 years. Despite the 8 year gap, Bad Boys 2 did way better than the first movie. Opened with 46 million, made 138 million domestically, 273 million worldwide. So pretty much it doubled the first movie, which is a hell of an accomplishment for a sequel, even though it was super expensive. So although I imagine this made a profit once it hit like home media on DVD. I imagine it must have sold big on DVD, I would imagine. So yeah, Bad Boys 2 was a hit. And so you think, okay, Bad Boys 3 should be like around the corner, maybe in a couple years. Hopefully. No. It took 17 years for Bad Boys 3. I remember like hearing about a Bad Boys 3 in like the mid 2010s. I think like 2014, 2015. It's always like a rumored movie, but it just never really got off the ground. Apparently, some rumors with that maybe they're afraid it would cost too much. Considering you know Will Martin and like Michael Bay all together, their salaries would just be ridiculous. But we did get a Bad Boys 3, Bad Boys for Life. No Michael Bay this time. He's not involved in this one. But we still have Will and Martin. And with this, I was thinking, okay, it's been almost 2 decades. Do people still really care about Bad Boys? Like, is there like really that much demand for a Bad Boys 3 at this point? I was kind of doubtful there was, but turned out I was wrong. Dead wrong. There must have been a whole lot of demand for a Bad Boys 3 because Bad Boys for Life did low key incredible, especially for a January release. That too, like that January release, like that doesn't exactly scream blockbuster, okay? January has a pretty historically bad reputation when it comes to movies and type of movies that come out. I mean, sure, you can have a January movie be a hit, but for the most part, it's known as a dump month. But Bad Boys for Life, it did summer numbers in January. I mean, this opened with 62 million, made over 200 million domestically, over 400 million worldwide on a 90 million budget. It's fantastic. And it was the biggest movie of 2020. Granted, that accomplishment doesn't mean much considering what ended up happening in 2020, but still it's a feather in its cap. So, yeah, so obviously Sony would be like, okay, people still want to see Bad Boys. So let's make another one. Let's make number 4. And here we are with Bad Boys Ride or Die. And honestly, I don't know why they named Bad Boys 3 Bad Boys for Life. You'd think they would have named the fourth movie For Life, play off, 4, it would have been easy, but they just didn't. I don't know. Maybe they thought it'd be too predictable. I don't know. But yeah, here we are with Bad Boys Ride or Die. So yeah, the Bad Boys movies, even though they've never been winners when it comes to quality, except like the third movie was actually well received across the board. They've always been audience favorites, and that's really important. So, Bad Boys, its history of success, got labeled that as a pro. Not to mention brand name recognition, that's also a pro. Another pro for Bad Boys Ride or Die, it has a June release, which is a whole lot better than January because this has the advantage of having, summer weekdays. Summer weekdays could be hella lucrative because obviously people's schedules are a bit more free in summer relatively in comparison to like say like fall or spring or winter. Well, really not like the holidays, like post holidays. So yeah, box office numbers really increase throughout the weekdays, and that gives Bad Boys Ride or Die an advantage. So yeah, good summer release date. Gonna give that a pro. Another pro is that reviews for Bad Boys Ride or Die are solid, not quite as good as For Life, but it's a 63%. That's fine. That's acceptable. It's a whole lot better than I think Bad Boys 2. Bad Boys 2, I think that got a really bad score. So last I checked, I think it was in the 20s. I'll be the judge of that. How low was that? Yeah, 24%. That's a bit of a yikes. So 63%, that's a big improvement compared to that. But its audience score is what I really need to talk about. This audience score is high. It's a 97%. Like, that's the type of audience score you want. That tells you that the people who are watching this movie really, really, really enjoy it. And that can only mean good things for its run. And its cinema score is an A minus, which is also a very solid not number, a very solid score compared to the other Bad Boys movies. Let me see. Oh, that's weird. Like 1, 2, and 3 all have A's, but Ride or Die has an A minus. I don't. That's not really that much of an issue. I just find it interesting. It's just a bit lower in terms of cinema score, but I don't think it's a serious issue. It's not like it's a B or something. If it was a B, we'd have serious problems. But an A minus is still more than acceptable. So word of mouth is very good. Critic scores are fine, audience scores a lot better. So that's a pro. Another pro is that this weekend is pretty much all about Bad Boys for Ride or Die. I mean, sure, there's the Watchers, but that's looking real DOA right now. And when it comes to direct competition, I mean, the May release date, as you know, May was a bit of a disaster. Lots of flops in May. Furiosa, what that movie's just dead at this point. That's not an issue. Fall Guy, that died pretty quickly after it released. There's still Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, but that's literally a month old. Um, there won't be like any real like action movies or like any like comparable movies to this. I guess The Bike Riders in like 2 weeks. I guess Horizon, maybe that. I don't know. I can't think of any like serious like direct movies that are gonna be like that will directly hit this. I can't really think of any. Maybe Deadpool and Wolverine, but that's like in late July. But yeah, competition is non-existent at this point. Yes, I know there's Inside Out 2 next weekend, but that's going after a different audience. It's not even the same genre, so it's not gonna. I can't imagine it would affect Bad Boys Ride or Die that much. So yeah, direct competition is pretty much non-existent. But the competition in general is non-existent. So I'm gonna label that as a pro. Another pro is that next week is Father's Day weekend. I say this is a pro because Bad Boys, this is very much a dad movie. I think we can all agree on that. And usually like very like male centric movies tend to do very well on Father's Day. They get a boost in box office, similar to how like a lot of female centric movies get a boost in box office on like Mother's Day. Same rules. So yeah, next week I imagine its second weekend won't will be probably lower than it probably would be under normal circumstances. So yeah, having that holiday next week will help this movie out a lot. So I'm gonna label that as a pro. Trying to think of some other pros. I guess we can talk about. I guess Will Smith. Let's talk about him. Well, actually, it's a pro and you know what? Let's go to cons in a way because, well, actually, I don't know. Yeah, let's just talk about Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. Let's talk about the track records before I get to the real cons. Okay, so Will Smith, he's been around for a long time, ever since the early '90s. Fresh Prince of Bel Air. As I mentioned, Bad Boys. That was like, that wasn't his first movie technically, but most people recognize it as his first main movie. Okay, kind of like how most people recognize like M. Night Shyamalan's first main movie as The Sixth Sense, or James Cameron's first main movie as The Terminator. It's like that. So yeah, I mean Will Smith. He had Bad Boys, Independence Day, Men in Black, Enemy of the State. We're gonna ignore Wild Wild West. Uh, Men in Black 2, Bad Boys 2, I Robot, Shark Tale, Hitch, Pursuit of Happiness, I Am Legend, Hancock. This man was killing it in the 2000s. Like it was like him and like Tom Cruise. Like they were just like it was just hit after hit after hit after hit. Obviously, Tom Cruise stumbled after War of the Worlds, mainly because of his couch jumping. Will Smith didn't have that issue, but after Hancock, things changed. He took like a 4 year hiatus from doing movies. He came back in 2012 with Men in Black 3, which did all right. But then after that, things took a real bad turn. After Earth, yeet. That is oof, a big oof right there. That whole movie was basically almost just felt like a plan to prop up like his son Jaden Smith, his career, like give him like a big movie, and hopefully he has a whole franchise. Didn't work at all. The movie was a disaster, critically and financially, and yeah, no one remembers it except me. I'll never forget about After Earth. Ugh. So then Winter's Tale, he was like a main actor in that. I'm not really gonna count that. Focus did okay. Concussion didn't do well at all. Suicide Squad, the original, that did really good financially. It doesn't mean anyone liked it. And then you have Collateral Beauty, which no one gave a damn about. I don't even think it did that well. Did it? Well, it did okay-ish, but no one remembers it at all. Bright, I'm not going to count that because that's Netflix. Aladdin, where he was the genie, and that was certainly a choice Disney made. But Aladdin 2019, it made $1 billion. I think it's Will's only $1 billion movie. Is it? Yeah, it's his only $1 billion movie. So that's good. Obviously, it's a good thing to have it in a resume, even though the movie wasn't really anything to write home about. Although I wouldn't know, I didn't see it, but I heard it's just kind of myth. Gemini Man, ugh, that movie was a mistake. Gave us that terrifying young Will Smith, which he looked fine, like when the lighting was like dark, but when the lighting, but when you like got to see him like in full, like in full, without like surrounded by darkness, it's terrifying. You don't want to look at him. Trust me. Then Spies in Disguise, that was an animated movie. I'm not really gonna count that. Then Bad Boys for Life, big old hit. Then King Richard, no one really saw that. Didn't help. It was part of the HBO Max experiment, that little doomed experiment of 2021. Although he did win an Oscar for it, for Best Actor. He did get that. And I will definitely go over what happened the same night he won that Oscar. Don't you worry. Yeah, Will Smith, his track record, he's had a lot of hits, but in the last decade, it's been a way more spotty than usual. And then you got Martin Lawrence. Let's go through his track record. So, just like Will Smith, most people kind of recognize Martin's like first major movie as like Bad Boys. Then after that, and there was like Life with Eddie Murphy that didn't do too hot. Blue Streak did quite all right for itself. And then Big Mama's House, that was a big hit for Martin. Then just a lot of L's. Like, what is this? What's the worst that could happen? No one gave a shit about that. No one gave a shit about Black Knight. National Security, I don't think anyone remembers that. They had Bad Boys 2. They had Rebound, a movie I saw as a kid. That's literally the only way I even remember it, because no one gave a damn about it. The Big Mama's House 2, which despite the 6 year gap, it managed to do all right for itself. Then you got Open Season, but that was animated. Then Wild Hogs was a hit, big old hit. Although he definitely had help from John Travolta and Tim Allen. It wasn't just him, and William H. Macy to a lesser extent. Then you got Welcome Home Roscoe Jenkins and College Road Trip. Those did I think they did okay-ish in the grand scheme of things. Then Death at a Funeral, which was just I think did okay too. The Big Mama's House 3, a movie nobody wanted, but didn't do like the worst ever. Then he took a long break from making movies, and then he came back with Bad Boys for Life, and now here we are with Ride or Die. So his track record is even more spotty than Will's. But obviously, most people are going to watch Bad Boys, Ride or Die for Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, and their chemistry and them bouncing off each other. That's the main reason why people watch the Bad Boys movies in the first place. So I don't think the track records are going to be that much of an issue with this movie. What could be, what most people believed could have been an issue is what happened with Will Smith at the 2022 Oscars. Yeah, it's time to talk about this. Time to talk about the big old elephant in the room. The slap. Oh, the slap. I remember it. Well, I didn't watch it live, but I remember after it happened, the internet went nuts and I was just caught off guard. I was like, whoa, 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 what is going on? So, all right. So it was, I looked up the date exactly. It was like March 27th, 2022. So the Oscars were happening for all the like 2021 movies. It was kind of typical whatever bleh Oscars. And Chris Rock was hosting. This is important information. So Chris Rock was hosting. It was doing like his little comedy stuff, and he talked about, he saw like Will and his wife Jada Pinkett Smith, the audience. Chris Rock made like a joke about how Jada was now like pretty much bald, and he made like a GI Jane joke, like a reference to a movie that's like from 1997. And you probably think, oh, whatever it is like a kind of a, whatever joke. But the thing is, apparently Jada, like, she had like this condition where like your hair just like it's just gone, like patches of it or just all of it just goes away. And she was dealt with that. That's the reason why she was bald. And so the joke's not exactly in the best taste, but it's not like a horribly offensive joke. It's just a joke that you probably should have thought twice about. And you think, okay, that's just the end of it. Chris Rock just made like a somewhat like iffy joke. You think that'd be it? Oh no, Will Smith, he responded to that joke. He got up out of his chair, out of his seat, walked up to the stage, and this man walked with a purpose. He knew damn well what he was about to do. He walked up to Chris Rock, slapped him across the face, live on TV in front of millions of people, and then he walked back. And then Chris Rock is in shock. He's like holding his face, like Will Smith slapped the shit out of me. Like he's in legitimate shock. And I imagine like everyone like in the audience, like at the Oscars and people watching the Oscars like at home or whatever, they probably thought, okay, is this like a sketch? Is this meant to happen? Is this planned? Like people were confused. But then what Will Smith said after the slap, immediately afterwards, when he sat back down, that told everyone, yeah, this isn't scripted at all. Like, this is very much real. He proceeded to say, and I quote, "Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth." He yelled that with passion. Like, he was pissed beyond belief. And obviously became a big meme later on. But everyone was just shocked, and people were just like, "What the hell is happening? How did this happen?" And once it happened, it went viral. I mean, there's literally a video of like the whole thing, like uncensored. I think it was like from The Guardian. That video has over 123 million views. That one video. Like that's how big the whole thing was. I remember people talking about it for like a good two, like several weeks actually. And there was like some fallout from this. Chris Rock, he didn't press charges against Will, even though he definitely could have. Will Smith, like, he won the Oscar later that night for King Richard. And he apologized to everyone except for Chris Rock, although he did apologize to Chris Rock via social media posts like a day after. And Will, because of his actions, he got banned from the Academy for 10 years. So he didn't. He still has his Oscar, but in terms of attending Academy events, yeah, that's not happening for another decade. And so there was some concern with this, like being his first movie since that whole incident. Like there's some concern that would it negatively affect Bad Boys 4? Are people willing to look past the slap? Has the slap like changed people's perception of Will Smith? Like there was a lot of questions regarding that. And it seems like according to the numbers, it doesn't seem like it's having that much of an effect. It seems like most people pretty much moved on, or they're just willing to just be like, I guess, separate the art from the artist. Maybe one of those situations. But yeah, so the slap was like obviously a big moment in Will Smith's career. not exactly for the best of reasons. Um, so you had that to deal with. So I guess it seemed like that was going to be a con, but it seems like not really having much of an effect. But I had to mention it because everyone else was mentioning it. Everyone was mentioning it in articles, like all the articles about Bad Boys 4 and its box office, talking about that because you kind of have to. It's important. But yeah, I guess that's not really a con, but it's something to to note. But actual cons. This being the fourth movie, the fourth Bad Boys movie. Obviously, Bad Boys 3 that had like damn near 2 decades of like a wait time, and usually like I mean, look at Pixar sequels. Like some of those sequels had like long gaps. Like, we're talking like for Toy Story 3, it was like 11 years. Finding Dory, 13 years. Incredibles 2, 14 years. Long ass gaps of time. And what that does is that kind of builds hype up, like really builds it up because people like really want to see like these characters again or to see this franchise again. So you have like that demand really like build. But when you try to do another movie after that, that demand really isn't there. At least not to the same degree. Like when Incredibles 2, for comparison's sake, Incredibles 2 was coming out, people were foaming at the mouth over the idea of an Incredibles 2. And then when it finally came out, it was an enormous hit, Pixar's biggest hit. But now recently they're like, oh, we're making Incredibles 3. Nobody gives a fuck. Like for real. Nobody cares. So yeah, so that's kind of like the Bad Boys Ride Dice kind of in that danger zone of sequels where you make one where it took a long time to get made, then you make another one like that same level of anticipation just isn't really there. But at least like the gap between this is hilariously this is like the shortest gap between Bad Boys movies, like 4 years. Like remember, 1 and 2, 8 years, 2 and 3, 17 years. Now 3 and 4, 4 years, the shortest gap, the shortest wait time between Bad Boys movies. And I also gotta mention like when you reach like a fourth movie and when you reach like part four in this series, you're really risking like the franchise fatigue. You're really risking like okay, like, oh boy, another one. like even when you reach like the third entry, like people may or may not get tired of the movies. So that's always like a problem when you reach like a certain number of movies. So yeah, potential franchise fatigue, and just the lack of like of the same hype the third movie got, same anticipation the third movie got. I'm gonna label those as cons. I guess I also mentioned the marketplace has been awful. It was so bad. Last weekend was a joke. It was a complete waste of a weekend. Like it was just things were so bad, so bad, and we're probably not gonna get a mega blockbuster until like Deadpool and Wolverine. That's pretty much being positioned as the savior of 2024. Until that movie comes out, we're just kind of like stuck with movies that might do well, but they're not gonna reach like $1 billion levels of well. So yeah, so summer it's been rough. It's been pretty awful, and yeah, I'm gonna label that as a con, just weak marketplace. But I forgot to mention his Thursday previews 5.875. That's pretty good. That is very good. Sure, it's not as good as Bad Boys for Life that had better Thursday previews of 6.3. But still, I mean, it's not that far off from 6.3, and it is a better preview number than say Furiosa and Fall Guy. I don't think it's as good as Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Grant that movie had like some numbers like added on to his Thursday previews. I believe these are just straight Thursday previews. So Yeah, these numbers are pretty good, I would say. They're more than acceptable. So I'm going to label that as a late pro. And I think that's it. I think I labeled like all the main points. Yeah. Yeah. So opening weekend, this movie was projected to hit like the 50s, and it went down to the 40s, or some word it would hit the 30s. With these preview numbers, it's definitely not hitting the 30s. It's looking like it's going to hit the 50s, which would be great for a movie like this. So I'm going to go with 50 to 55 million opening weekend, and its legs should be good, realistically. I mean, June doesn't have a whole lot to offer. So, yeah, I think its legs should be like all right. Maybe like 150 to 170. I'm going to go with that. And that's it. So that's Bad Boys Ride or Die. We got one more movie to discuss, and that movie is The Watchers. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, so that's it. That's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. Want to check out more videos like this? Got playlists on the homepage, all previous prediction videos I've made this year, the past few years. You want to watch any of them, go right ahead. There's also the canceled series where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. Talked about Bad Boys 4 twice. The first time was episode 200, where it got its 2024 date. This was like right when like the strikes, um, yeah, what the writers and actor strikes were just fucking every movie over, and Bad Boys for Life was like one of the few that not be completely fucked over as a result. It actually like got a release date, so yeah, so that was the first time it happened. So that was the first time I mentioned it. Second time was episode 236. Um, so I believe Bad Boys Ride or Die was supposed to come out like a week later on the 14th, but then they switched it up to the 7th. Moved it up a week. So that's really all that happened. So I talked about, well, actually, with that first, with episode 200, I talked about Bad Boys Ride or Die. Well, it wasn't even given a name yet. It was still Bad Boys 4. Talked about that alongside Gran Turismo, Ghostbusters Afterlife 2, which didn't have a name yet, and Frozen Empire, Karate Kid, and like they listen. The second time I talked about it, episode 236, I mentioned The Watchers, which is funny because it's coming out the same weekend. Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem 2, the next animated Ninja Turtle movie, Paw Patrol 3, and the Naked Gun reboot. So that was episode 236. So if you want to watch those episodes and other ones I've done, I recently made 248, episode 248. Did that. So if you want to watch that or any other ones I've done, you want to binge all the cancel episodes, want to watch them all from beginning to now, I highly encourage you to do that. So go do it. There's also the canceled series. Yeah, that's the canceled series. There's also box office recaps where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. My May recap will be next week, so stay tuned for that. But if you want to watch any of the past recap videos I made on the channel, you can go right ahead. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.